All right, Nick, let's talk about the Atlanta Falcons. Falcons off to a decent start, 1-1. I think they're looking pretty decent so far. Head coach Raheem Morris doing an admirable job, but I think there's something going on in the Falcons organization, a decision that they've made that is uncharacteristic of the rest of the league. I think it's something they're doing that's really smart, and I think it's something that could really show off later down the stretch. I'm Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, there's something special that the Falcons are doing that really nobody else in the NFL is doing up to this point in the season, and that is the use of rookies in this season. So far, through 2 weeks, Falcons not really playing any rookies, and the only team to do so. Is this a genius move? I think so. We have an article to highlight that as well. Let's get on into it. We'll talk more about it on the other side. This is from SI.com. It says the Atlanta Falcons drafted 8 players in April through the first 2 weeks, the first 2 regular season games. Only one fifth-round linebacker, J.D. Bertrand, has taken the field, and none have played offensive and defensive snaps. Of course, talking about he took the field for special teams. They're the only team in the NFL with such a distinction. Falcons head coach Raheem Morris, speaking virtually with reporters Tuesday afternoon, cited depth as the primary cause. You get 6 defensive linemen that we're putting out right now, Morris said, citing Grady Jarrett, David Onyemata, Eddie Goldman, Zach Harrison, Daquan Graham, and Contavious Street. Guys that have played a bunch of football. They're all working, really working that rotation right now. Those are the guys that have been up first. So it seems like when you hear all of this, Morris is saying, I want guys out there that have played a lot of football. I want the veterans out there. I want to have a really strong core of guys going down the stretch because we think this is a team can do a lot of good stuff, and we want to have this, depth with rookies. We can develop them, but we have so many great veterans right now. I think this is the key here, which is very interesting because no one in the NFL doing this at this time. Nick, I'm curious what your thoughts are on Raheem Morris's decisions here, what you think this could possibly mean for the Falcons. But before we get to you, Falcons fans, in the comment section below, big game coming up this weekend. Kansas City Chiefs, tough team, but they've been shaky. They've been really tight games lately. What do you think the final score of Falcons versus Chiefs is in the comment section below? We love to hear what your predictions are. But Nick, nonetheless, what do you think about Raheem Morris' decision with all of these veterans?
So I always love coaches and teams that are willing to zig when the rest of the NFL is zagging, right? When everyone's going, let's say, with a 4-3 defense, I love teams that are willing to go 3-4. When everyone's going with like 2 tight end packages, I love teams that are going with no tight ends, something like that. When no fullbacks are being played, I love teams that use a fullback, teams that think strategically and try to be contrarian to the rest of the NFL. And I think that's exactly what the Falcons are doing here. And I think it is actually a really smart move because when you consider most of the NFL, the whole structure of how teams try to win is they lock up their star players with big contracts and they use cheap rookies to supplement it, right? Supplement that. So basically what it means is they've got sort of a barbell approach, right? If you imagine a barbell as if you're lifting weights, you've got a bunch of veterans on one side that are really expensive, then a bunch of rookies on the other side that are really, really cheap and not a lot in the middle. The Falcons are taking the opposite approach. They're using a lot of veterans and very little rookies in terms of their production on the field. Now, what does that mean over the course of a season? It generally means you're going to get fewer mistakes. You're going to get more consistent play when you get into October, November, December. You're going to avoid those rookie debacles. You're not going to hit the rookie wall. Things like that are not going to happen. And that's exactly what I think Raheem Morris is going for. We know this team is talented, right? The fact that they were to beat the Philadelphia Eagles the way they did, I think shows this team can beat pretty much anybody in a relatively weak NFC right now. Although, admittedly, the Saints look really good through 2 weeks, even though I think that could probably a little bit of a mirage. I think they'll regress towards the mean. But Raheem Morris, his team, his coaching staff, his strategy right now is like, okay, let's utilize our talent the best we can and figure out a way to just win 9, 10, 11 games and get to the playoffs. And historically, this strategy has actually worked. You go back to the late 1970s with the Washington Redskins. This is really going to date myself here, but George Allen right there, he was the head coach. And what he was able to do is he basically traded away all his draft picks. Literally all of the draft picks were veterans. And they literally were winning 10, 11, 12 games every year because they always had a stacked team full of veterans that were experienced and avoided the disastrous mistakes that will cost you games. Falcons fans, you know about those disastrous mistakes, right? Remember the Desmond Ritter flops. We remember issues like that, dumb penalties on defense late in the game when you got rookies screwing up, when you got offensive linemen making bad mistakes going back a number of years because you're playing rookies. Raheem Morris is going with the opposite approach. I think it's smart because we know this team is talented with the veterans alone. There's no reason to rush rookies. Let the veterans play it out and get yourself back to the postseason. Smart strategy here from Raheem Morris.
Yeah, Nate, and I think what you're talking about is really just true. Is when teams do something different, it really throws everybody else off. Everybody expects these guys to put in the rookies. Everyone expects to game plan for these guys. That's not what the Falcons are doing. They're keeping this veteran core, and I think they've spent a lot of money, and I think they've got a lot of really good players here. And it's like you said, there's going to be less mistakes down the stretch. And I think when you look at how the Falcons are structured right now, Kirk Cousins coming into this season maybe needs a little bit of rust to break off. Maybe needs a little spool up time. There's no room for these type of mistakes. There's no room for these errors. The defense has got to be tight. The offense, they've got to be in sync. And there's no room for rookie mistakes right now when this team is really spooling up. And this is a Falcons team that they've got some pretty tough games, like you alluded to. We got Chiefs this week, Saints the next week. That's going to be a tough one. Bucks after that. Bucks are looking pretty spicy as well. Carolina Panthers, nobody really knows what they're going to look like with Andy Dalton. Maybe they're different. Probably not, though. Then you got Seahawks, Bucks again. It's going to be a brutal stretch for this Falcons team, and they need to keep this momentum going. So I think not making the mistakes, having these veteran guys in here is going to be crucial going down the stretch. And I think, again, it's showing Raheem Morris making some really good decisions so far.
Yeah, and I'll end on this. I'm going to go back to another NFL history anecdote. It's one of my favorite ones. Tex Schramm, who was the general manager of the Dallas Cowboys for like 30 years from 1960 through 1989. He had a saying, him along with his scouting director, Gil Brandt, in terms of how they found talent and how they managed their team as a whole. They said, if you do what everybody else does, you'll be mediocre just like everybody else. The Atlanta Falcons are trying to do the opposite, right? We know they have the talent to not be mediocre. Their performance on the field has been frankly mediocre over the past 3 seasons. Raheem Morris mixing it up here in terms of a strategy, I think it's the right move to make.